are new here, I have been filming automotive videos for a very long time. But before I became That Dude in Blue and made automotive videos, I was involved in, I guess you could say, the underground side of car culture. As you can see, I'm in a 450 wheel horsepower Acura RSX. This car I'm actually borrowing from my landlord, believe it or not. I'll have a more in-depth video of this very soon, but I borrowed it for 20 bucks, very much like the $36 Supra. A lot of people get into cars, quote unquote, the wrong way. The wrong way of doing things. And I figured that being in this Acura RSX with the big turbo on it and just driving it around, it brings me back to a time. It brings me back to when I was starting to get into cars, but nobody in my family was getting into cars. And it brought me into the street racing scene. But I want to make this very clear. This is a very long time ago. I'm a much different person than I used to be when it comes to this stuff, and why I eventually quit, and why it influenced my entire career later in life. And at the end of the day, do I regret making these bad decisions? Answer's no. Let's get started. How did I really get into the car scene? Dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. My main influences as a young kid were Need for Speed Underground and Fast and Furious. And it's so hilarious to think that as car people, we think before we actually experience any of the real thing that that's how it's gonna be. Oh yeah, there's gonna be a DJ set up and having b-boy dance competitions. Yeah, that's totally gonna happen at the real street racing meet. But you have this sense of identity of pulling up in your car and showing it off at night, you know, people getting off of work and just going to see their friends, sometimes just in an open parking lot, and that's all we want to do. And most of the time, I was not a guilty soul. Most of the time, I went to car meets to stand there and just learn, and stand there and talk to other car people that have been into it in much longer time. But peer pressure kicks in sometimes, and if you don't know how to handle it, you do stupid things. So when I got my driver's license, that's when I really got into cars. And I got pulled over for the very first time when I was 18 years old. I just turned 18, and I'm not even kidding you. It was when I was listening to the Need for Speed Underground soundtrack. He pulled me over, saw I was terrified, right? And he was like, I'm gonna cut you a break, you know better. I was like, oh my God, thank goodness. And I was living in Virginia, which is pretty much the most strict speed state in the country. You guys have heard me talk about this before. I've done an entire documentary on it. Let's move on. That happens, but then when I'm 19, I get my first reckless driving ticket. And it absolutely ruins me. Fought so hard to stay out of jail, essentially. And that was my first taste with the law ever. I was a goody two-shoes kid growing up. I never went to juvie or anything like that. So after I'm 19, I moved to Virginia Beach, and I go to Mount Trashmore Skate Park. And at Mount Trashmore Skate Park, the guy who was working at the booth where you sign your waiver and everything saw my Mustang and said, how come I've never seen you at the car meets around here? And I said, car meets? Wait, those are real? Like, those are nighttime car meets? Those are like a real thing? Because I grew up in a small town in Virginia, and that just wasn't really a thing. So I take his advice and I go to the car meet. I go to the address he gives me, and I am absolutely flabbergasted. Underglow, body kits, like exactly what you thought of as a kid, just without, you know, Ludacris blasted in the background. And I was like, this is where I belong. Like, this is where I want to be. And I had a hard time making friends at my school that I was transferred to for college. And I was like, this is where I need to be. I didn't know too much about cars, but I knew this is where I was gonna learn almost everything. So every Friday and Saturday night, I was at this car meet in Virginia Beach. It was at a Freedom Wash, or it was a car wash called Freedom Wash. And then down the street, there was a diner called Gin Rose. And this diner was really just very mom and pop. You walked in and all the cars that had ever been there had a picture on the wall. It was very, very homey, but they allowed people to have car meets in their parking lot in front of it. And it was some of the best times of my life. I went there after class, I got my homework done, and the first thing I did was go to the car meet on Friday and Saturday. It was what I looked forward to every day. So then I got swindled into my first race ever, and it was against a Camaro. And I'm in this 3-valve, you know, convertible. Like, what can I do? I don't know what it was about that convertible, but it was a factory freak for the time. It had an intake and a tune and exhaust on it, and it ran 13.4 consistently, which nowadays is not that impressive, but it was quick for a 19-year-old kid. And the race was dead even. Next thing you know, I'm absolutely hooked. Absolutely hooked. I'm going out weekend after weekend after weekend on this one road that I'm not gonna mention because it's probably still used today, but it had a Jersey wall, 3 lanes, and no shoulder, and it was a 7-mile straight. I didn't feel like I was hurting anybody or disturbing anybody. It was kind of in the middle of nowhere, and you know, you kind of convince yourself that what you're doing isn't, you know, there's a lot worse crimes out there. I'm just having fun. And we would always have only 2 or 3 people. This is before social media really took off. And this is when word of mouth was king. And honestly, I'll be real with you. I think that side of car culture has really been damaged by social media in a lot of ways, because if you have 2 people who wanted to like run, or when I say run, you know, go at each other, everybody now knows about it. It's not like a secret hidden culture where you had to have an in. Now it's like, oh, he posted it somewhere. And then to me, it's even stupider because you're like, wow, just way to give out the evidence, right? Point of the matter is, I'm doing it weekend after weekend after weekend, and everything's going completely fine. I would drive the 7 miles, check it, come back, do the hit, and go home. That's every single time. Was it wrong? Of course it was, but I was young and dumb, you know? But then I moved back to Richmond, Virginia, and I post on Facebook, I'd really wish that Virginia Beach's car scene was similar to Richmond's. And people said, what are you talking about? There's this car meet called Wing Command. Guys, before I continue telling you these stories, I just want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Off the Record. 41 million drivers get a ticket in the United States every single year. That's 1 in 5 in the United States every year, and also 112,000 people a day. And only 5% of those people contest their ticket. Everybody gives up. It just pays it off. Off the Record is the ultimate tool to help you out with traffic tickets, and I can very confidently say that with my testimony. I unfortunately got pulled over at 104 miles an hour in Washington State and received a nasty reckless driving ticket. But then it was super easy. I uploaded a picture of my ticket, answered a few questions about what happened, and then it paired me with a great qualified lawyer. Off the Record also vets its lawyers and kicks off poor performers, so you are assured a top lawyer for your case. And here's the best thing about Off the Record: if they can't dismiss the ticket or lower the sentence, then you get all your money back, full refund. Basically, the lawyer picks up your case and goes to court for you. It's stress-free, and you can go on with your life. So you get your ticket, don't sweat it. Take a picture of it, put it Off the Record, and the lawyer does all the work for you, and your life goes on just like normal. And Off the Record has a 97% success rate. There's absolutely nothing to lose. And with my testimony, guys, I can't tell you how amazing it was using this service. The average traffic ticket is $150, but over the next 3 years, your insurance premiums will typically go just over $1,000 plus. So you can save so much more money if you fight the ticket, win, and keep it off the record. Make sure to head over to offtherecord.com/DudeinBlue for 10% discount off your first case. Thank you guys so much, and let's get to telling some stories. I go to Wing Command and I'm absolutely floored. It's bigger than the ones in Virginia Beach. But the meet got so out of hand that it got shut down by the police 2 weeks later. I was late to the party. I got Smurf. I got my 2013 Coyote Mustang. Now, in the 3-valve Mustang, you couldn't really take on Evos and STIs and stuff like that very easily. But then I got Smurf, and I put an intake and a tune on it, and next thing you know, I am beating bolt-on Evos and STIs, and I'm like, oh my God, you just opened up a whole can of worms.
Want to race? To all my viewers, no, I'm not racing a Mini Cooper. Stupid passengers. The passengers are the ones that always influence the racing.
There was a guy named Max, super nice guy, if you're watching this right now. He showed up in this Busher Racing Evos. It would cam and lope, and he pulled into the car meet. And I was like, I'm not running that guy. Like, Max came up and said, hey, you want to do a fun run? And I'm like, I don't really, why? Don't make me. And he's like, come on, just for fun. And I gave into it, and I said yes. And I went to our spot, middle of nowhere, not bothering anybody. And we did it, and I beat him. I couldn't believe it. But you know, when it came to that 400 horsepower range, I dominated. I was doing really well in town. So everybody kind of used me as a benchmark. Like, so people would build their cars and be like, David's a really good benchmark. Use him. Whenever I lost, I was happy for the people who beat me, right? Because I was like, good for them. They built their car in their house. I'm like more of a bolt-on factory car. Good for them. What's up? It was a very tight-knit community, and it was all about word of mouth still, until I decided to run a car meet called Katos. And it was just at a Katos clothing store. It was me and a few friends who really got it together. It was a failed car meet a year before, but I said, hey, let's try to bring it back. And we were standing there in like 15-degree weather, you know, like just trying to make this thing happen. Next thing you know, a year later, it's overflowing. Then the local police caught wind of it, and what's very funny is this is when I stopped racing. I want you to think about this. This is when I truly stopped racing, because this finally took off, and I didn't want to throw it all away. Filming cool cars for a living, that fulfilled my need of car stuff. And most of the time, that meet was not advertised as a street racing meet. It wasn't. It was advertised as a cool meet to meet cool car people, and that was it. It just so happened sometimes people would drive like 10 miles away from the car meet and go do it. But the only problem is that they came back. They came back to the very same meet spot. Therefore, it made it look really bad. But I heard a story where the cops knocked on my friend's door and asked if I was a street racing organizer or Kingpin. And I was like, no, I'm just an easy target because I make videos. That's why. There is actually a video of Katos car meet way back in the day of its last time before the cops permanently shut it down because they just suspected too much. And it's really sad because it was a really good, humble car meet, and it only took one idiot to ruin everything. And that's the case with anywhere in the country. Even if you were hooning on the street, it wasn't like how it is today. Like I said, it was a lot more private and a lot more hard to find. It wasn't, I'm just gonna say it, guys, it wasn't like these takeovers that literally ruin people's day and people get in really bad accidents, right? You're gonna call me a very old fart for this, but what we were doing, even though it was dangerous and not smart, we were doing it in the middle of the country, or we were doing it in the middle of nowhere industrial parks. We weren't doing this stuff in intersections. We weren't doing this stuff in downtown areas where other people could get hurt. The only people we were endangering were ourselves. I know that sounds phony and high and mighty, but there is a difference. And I think there's a big problem in the car community right now saying that this is the same as that. It's so funny when you see a news story go, oh yeah, these street racers at the takeover, it's like, they're not those. No, they are not the same. Eventually I moved out of Virginia and moved to Atlanta, and I haven't really done any shenanigans like that since. It is so addicting. Like, it is dangerously addicting. It's very easy to convince yourself that you're not really the bad guy. You're not hurting anybody else. You're just having a good time. But then you hear the stories of somebody flipping their car or something horrible happening to somebody close you knew. A long time ago, a girl named Brianna I knew unfortunately passed away because of people racing. And it really opened my eyes to be like, wow, speed is dangerous, right? It's very dangerous. It's always going to be a part of car culture. There's no way to really stop it. The moment you start taking racetracks away and stuff like that, people are going to find a way. That's just how it is. I'm seriously not condoning this, but it's always gonna be a part of it. This side of car culture made me a better person. Did I do things that I'm not supposed to do? Absolutely. But I had great friends, great community. I was a part of something, and I really enjoyed it. I just have always wanted to tell you these things, but it just never was the right time. I just wanted to let you guys know that I've been there. I've been young, I've done it. I think all of us have been there at one point, but most of us either learn our lesson or get out before we have to learn our lesson. So I want you guys to tell me the best racing story you've ever had down below in the comment section, and also the ones where you got caught. That's the ones I really want to read. And if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and also comment, because it really does help the channel. It really does help the analytics. So I really appreciate all of your time. And I will see you guys next time, and take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.